Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, Lauren, for that beautiful introduction. We had such an engaging conversation before coming with you all today, and we're really excited to keep that conversation going. And I will start with our first question to both Ilinca and Maya. What initially inspired your passion for climate activism? We know that everyone has unique skills and perspectives that they bring to their advocacy, but how do you approach climate justice your way?
So I'll jump in first. So my name is Maya Penn. I am a Gen Z environmental and climate justice activist. I've been in this space since 2008. I started at 8 years old. And now at 23, I've been in the space for 15 years, which is very hard for me to wrap my mind around. My environmental activism focuses on a number of different areas. I'm very passionate about the underserved sections of activism within the environmental and climate space. So anything from environmental justice and how Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities, both in the global North and communities in the global South, are most adversely affected, as well as gender justice and how that overlaps with climate. Per the UNDP, 80% of people displaced by climate disasters are women and girls, and so many other factors such as disparities that are already affecting women and girls, such as access to housing, disparities in mobility, unpaid labor, and gender-based violence, and so many other layers make it so much more difficult for women and girls around the world to also access relief after disaster and extreme weather hits. So that's something that I'm also very passionate about as well. I'm also, as was mentioned, an artist and an animator and a designer. I started my own eco-fashion line in 2008 called Maya's Ideas. And I also, being an interdisciplinary artist and animator, am really passionate about accessibility to information and making these complex topics demystified and humanized and even fun to learn more about and engage with. So in a nutshell, just I have always too many ideas in a nutshell, but I'm so passionate about making this movement something for everyone because it is an issue that affects literally everyone in some degree.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be on this panel with you both, and it's so inspiring to hear how you're illuminating so many facets of climate justice that are often underrepresented and need so much action. So you can never have too many ideas.
I'm just so honored to be on the panel with y'all. I mean, you're gonna be blown away. Oh my gosh, okay. We were talking so much in the green room, like this, we need a 2-hour-long conversation.
Oh, absolutely. My name is Ilinca. As mentioned, I'm a Girl Up Coalition leader. And my climate action journey began in the classroom, actually. And I tell this story because I think it just shows how important it is to have climate education and to be, confident in our knowledge as young women. But it all began when I was taking a marine biology class when I was 14. And my teacher ended up being elected as a state representative in New Hampshire, which is where I'm from. And so, although he left halfway through the year, he talked to me and he said that the research I'd been doing for my midterm project on plastic pollution was actually something relevant to a piece of legislation he was hoping to introduce. And so when he wrote this bill, he asked me to come and testify and to share what I had been learning as a student before policymakers. And I remember being just so terrified to do it because when I walked into the room in the State House, I just saw this massive U-shaped table with legislators sitting at it, and they were all men. And I was the only young person in the room and the only young woman. And I just remember thinking, what did I get myself into and why am I here? And my voice was shaking and I delivered my statement. But after that, I realized I want to do this again because I think it's important because if I wasn't there, nobody who was really affected by the climate crisis would have had their story told. But also I didn't want to do it alone. And that's when I decided I want to find that kind of space. So I joined Girl Up, and since then I've been really doing a lot of work at the intersection of gender equality and girls' empowerment and climate justice, because I think that girls are the solution. We're the ones who are here showing up and leading these global movements for climate justice. I mean, you can see it just like on this bench, but we really need to have our voices heard in those policy-making spaces so that solutions are designed for us and by us. I now have a question for you both. Climate change is sometimes thought of as this issue that affects everyone universally, but we know that climate effects are most felt by young people and marginalized communities, and I know that you both have really been addressing that in your advocacy. So how do you talk about those intersections of climate and gender and race and age in your work? And when you receive pushback, is that something that, how do you approach that? And how do you really integrate that intersectionality in your activism?
Yeah, I can start. So for me, I'm from Houston, Texas, and the intersectionality of climate justice is absolutely critical to my work and to my experience within the climate justice movement. Growing up in Houston, there are petrochemical refineries right next to public high schools. Because there are no zoning laws in Houston, students are going to classes right in front of these petrochemical refineries, oftentimes having explosions and missing days and days and days of school because of the danger that this poses to their community. And not only that, but it also causes respiratory health issues. And most of these communities are Black, Latine, low-income communities, and they're most affected by the petrochemical refineries, by the effects of that. And so for me, after Hurricane Harvey struck Houston and witnessing the effects of the oil and gas industry in my hometown, I knew that I couldn't stay silent, and I knew that this had to be an issue brought to light. And so I organized the Houston Youth Climate Rally, which really focused on emphasizing how marginalized communities in Houston are affected by the oil and gas industry, are affected by the lack of zoning laws, are affected by consistent legislation that deregulates the oil and gas industry. And so for me, these intersections of gender, of class, of identity, of race are critical, and they cannot be ignored. And so for me, the way that I speak to this is really emphasizing the stories of these communities. I spoke with many students at Pasadena High School who experienced living right next to this petrochemical refinery, and they talked to me about how they've missed days of school, how they've fallen behind on their work, how that oftentimes they have to still work after school. And so not only they're experiencing falling behind in school, but also they're trying to support their families. And so I think hearing the stories of folks that are really being affected directly by this crisis is such a vital way to really bring these intersections to light. And so for me, storytelling is a really big part of my experience, as well as just advocating for these communities that are facing the effects head on.
Yeah, that's so amazing and so impactful, and I think just seeing those issues in your community and casting light on them and sharing those stories that otherwise they don't get told and they don't get that media coverage, but the people who are most affected by the climate crisis need to be the ones who are being given that support and those resources. So I think the work you're doing is amazing. And Maya, how about you? How have you tried to cast light on these intersections in your advocacy?
So I've kind of used so many different kind of methods and means and platforms, and anything from, of course, speaking, rallies, activism, all the way to using art and social media and kind of new emerging forms to reach people who feel like this is something that is far removed from them, when in actuality, they already have a place. Everyone already has a place and a role in this movement. It's just about taking control of how you want to show up. I always want people to feel like they belong and that their lived experience especially matters as well. I have my own nonprofit organization called Maya's Ideas for the Planet, and that's focused on both environmental and humanitarian issues. I launched it in 2011, and for example, one of our ongoing projects that I started in 2012 has been creating eco-friendly sanitary pads for women and girls and menstruators in Haiti, Senegal, Somalia, Cameroon, and in the U.S., and through different healthcare facilities, distributing those. And that's just a small way, but a very massive way in the same breath to tackle two issues that are from both an environmental and from a period poverty aspect. I'm really passionate about kind of overlapping kind of how my action shows up. And, you know, I love what, you know, you just said about storytelling as well, because during the Obama administration, I was actually commissioned to animate the opening of the first ever digital report presented to US Congress. And this was to get an American Museum of Women's History built in Washington. And the thing that showed me, and I was 16 at the time, going to the Capitol and presenting this animation is also shown to President Obama the next day. The thing that really that experience showed me, and which is why, you know, I utilize art and animation so much in my work as well, is that, you know, art has such a huge place within the movement and to create more accessibility to education and actually make real world tangible change as well. So there are a number of different ways, but those are two that stand out for me.
I love that. That's so impactful. And I love how you've been just harnessing all these different mediums to create change, and also just making sure that we don't treat these issues as being completely separate. I think only 64 out of 190 climate action plans at the national level even mention gender. And if we keep on treating these issues as separate, then how are we going to really take action at those forgotten intersections? And I think that it's just so cool that you've been doing so much work right there where it's most needed.
Yeah, that's incredible. And in our previous conversation before the panel, Maya talked to us about eco-anxiety and what it means to advocate for climate justice as young women fighting for our future when oftentimes we feel like the burden is on our shoulders. And I'd love to ask Maya, how can we heal? How can we approach this movement through strength, through resilience, and mitigate this eco-anxiety while also empowering ourselves and others to feel that they can still make a change no matter how daunting it may feel?
Absolutely, and I just love how beautifully you pulled together that question. And I know that we have about 3 minutes, but I do want to pause and mention that eco-anxiety is something that has been recognized by the American Psychological Association, which is a fear of environmental doom. In case any of you are like, oh my gosh, that sounds like me, we need you and your voice in this space and fight now more than ever. I'm someone who is a solutions-based activist, so I'm not just here telling you, here's what's wrong in the world and, you know, how we're all being negatively impacted by these issues, but here's what we can actually do about them. Here are the solutions that are being created by so many amazing young people around the world. How can we scale them and support them and make sure that not only our voices are heard, but each other's voices are heard? How can we pass the mic to each other, you know, support and lift up each other's lived experiences, backgrounds, expertise? And it's really about community and collectivism. We can't, you know, do this without working together. And I'm also very passionate about intergenerational activism as a member of Gen Z, and that's why I also love spaces like Girl Up, where we get to be in intergenerational collaboration and community, because it is all hands on deck situation, and everyone feels like, you know, they're just one drop in the ocean, but every drop creates a ripple effect. So I think that, you know, taking it from that community-centered approach and knowing what you as an individual bring to it already, what do you already care about and love and are passionate about, and how can you weave that into your work? Because 9 times out of 10, climate already affects whatever that thing is for you, that is your core passion or interest. So
Amazing, yeah. I think that's such an incredible message to take with us, is really understanding that we all have a role in this movement, and no matter what it looks like, no matter what it manifests itself as, that we can really take charge and really empower ourselves and our communities to really take swift action to mitigate climate change.
Yeah, I love that. And I think one thing that's really provided me a lot of comfort and inspiration as I've tried to find my place in this movement is this idea that there's no one-size-fits-all way to be an activist. I think it's common to think of someone who's holding the megaphone in front of a massive crowd of people if someone asks you to just close your eyes and picture an activist. But there's just so much work that you can do that really suits what you are caring about and what your skills are, whether that's art and animation or storytelling, or, you know, that can be speaking up in front of a crowd, but there's so much logistics that goes behind the scenes to even create that and make that possible. So I just think, like, hearing from climate advocates like you just makes me so excited for how we can all pull together our skills and kind of create that, you know, intertwined puzzle of like all of our pieces fitting together to create climate action.
yeah, I really love that, for sure.
Amazing. Well, thank you both so much for this incredible conversation. We are so happy that we got to discuss this with you, and we hope that you all take this message and really apply it to your own activism. Remember that one size does not fit all, and to use your creativity, use your inspiration, use your mind to make change.
I think we have time for a quick call to action if any of y'all want to, how everyone can support, the work that you're doing and get involved with your movements as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness, there's so many ways. I think just like continuing the conversation, being confident in what you specifically bring to the table, and share your story. And one thing that I encourage you to check out is the Women Speak database online, which I've been helping to create. It's the first database of just women's contributions to the climate movement from around the world. And just reading about all the amazing work that women are doing is like an incredible way to just like plug into the movement and gain inspiration and keep amplifying work like what Maya and Shania are doing.
Yeah, and to add on that, I would say look into your community, look at the environmental issues that your community is facing, whether that's access to clean water, whether that's food deserts, whether that's housing rights, and really see how you can get involved. At Boston, I've been involved with Sociedad Latina, which is an organization that works with Hispanic youth to combat food deserts, to combat homelessness. And so really looking into different organizations in your area and seeing what they're doing to tackle these issues is, I think, a great way to get involved.
Yeah, and again, you belong in this space, and I share a lot of information about a myriad of pretty much everything that we just spoke about today, and you can learn more about my work at, I'm at Maya's Ideas everywhere, and I'm really passionate about, connecting with, everyone, like communities like you, people who are in the room, because we are the future and the now of this movement, and we're stronger together, so thank you.